This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Tuesday, September 15th. This is Africa 54. Due to the global outbreak of COVID-19, Voice of America is taking every necessary precaution to safeguard its employees, so our broadcast will look a little different today and in the near future as we, out of an abundance of caution, reduce our staffing at VOA headquarters here in Washington. We're working to help keep you informed about what's going on, and we appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. 10 Tanzanian school children were killed when a dormitory at a privately owned primary school in the north of the country caught fire, according to Marco Gaguti, the regional commissioner for Kagera, speaking to Reuters on Monday. Gaguti said police, the fire department, and other government officials have started an investigation into the fire, the cause of which is unknown. 7 other children suffered burns during the inferno, which started before midnight. The dormitory was housing 74 pupils at the time it caught fire. Police are working with relatives of the pupils to identify the charred bodies. Recovery teams continued to bring bodies to the surface on Tuesday after more than 50 gold miners were buried underground in eastern Congo. Miners searching the site near the town of Kamituga had retrieved 18 bodies late on Sunday, and more were brought to the surface on Monday. Heavy rains on Friday caused the artisanal gold mine to give in, burying those working below ground. None of the miners are thought to have survived. As the recovery teams went about their grim task, relatives of the dead men gathered near the mining site to mourn as others prepared coffins. The provincial minister of humanitarian affairs in the region, Cosmos Kusimwa Bishisha, said officials were still identifying the families of the dead before providing assistance. Amnesty International says it has obtained videos showing Mozambique's security forces torturing and abusing militants. The advocacy group is calling for independent investigations, but the spokesperson of Mozambique's defense ministry said the videos shouldn't be taken seriously. Salem Solomon has our story.
A video that appears to show Mozambican security forces torturing and possibly killing militants is prompting calls for investigations and denials from government officials. Amnesty International obtained 5 videos and 3 photos it says were taken in the restive Cabo Delgado region. The images have been analyzed by the group's Crisis Evidence Lab, which believes they are authentic and taken in the first 6 months of 2020. Brian Kastner is Amnesty International Senior Crisis Advisor for Arms and Military Operations. He told VOA that one video shows soldiers cheering while bound detainees are kicked and beaten with rifle butts.
In one case, one of the soldiers cuts the ear off one of the detainees and presents it to him while people cheer. In another case, they threaten to light the body on fire or light the person on fire while they're still alive. That part is not actually videotaped.
But the spokesperson for Mozambique's defense ministry, Omar Saranga, said the images should be looked at with skepticism. The military attire in these videos and images should not be taken for certain and are not accurate, he told reporters at a press conference in Maputo. The assailants appear to be from the Mozambique Armed Defense Forces and the Mozambique Rapid Intervention Unit, based on their uniforms, Amnesty said. But Saranga said that extremist groups and insurgents seek to discredit security forces by wearing their attire, and the rights group's researchers did not take the nature of reductionist propaganda into account. Despite the government's stance, Amnesty believes it is essential for the government to get a thorough investigation by an impartial body.
The next step is that the government does need to do a real investigation and not a a whitewash investigation, not an immediate denial, not a calling it fake news or whatever else. They need to do a real investigation. And so that doesn't mean the police and the army investigating themselves, but an outside office, an outside investigative arm of the government. They should be given the first opportunity to do that.
The motive of the attacks appears to be retaliation, Kastner said. In one of the videos, a soldier appears to refer to his deployment to the region, saying, "I am here because of you."
They're not asking any questions. This is not an interrogation. It definitely seems to be punishment. In at least one of the videos, soldiers say this is Mozambique Praia. They're talking about the fact that they're in Cabo Delgado.
The region in northern Mozambique is home to some of the largest liquid natural gas extraction projects on the continent. It has also become extremely violent in recent years, with 1,854 deaths from organized violent attacks since 2017, according to the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project. David Matsinye is a human rights researcher with Amnesty International's Southern Africa, and he says that while much attention and focus of news coverage has been about understanding the links between insurgents and foreign extremist groups, they are actually local people with local grievances. After gold, rubies, graphite, and natural gas were discovered in the region, locals lost access to key resources.
The tipping point appears to have been the expropriation of the land on which people have depended for centuries to provide for food, water, sanitation, all those basic necessities, because the government has never been able to establish an effective administration over there.
The loss of land made young people more susceptible to radicalization, Matsinye says.
It was easier for whoever radical preacher may have come in to convince the young people, because 80% of radicalization had been accomplished by the material conditions through the relationships between the community and the government.
The Mozambican government has called for a stronger response to the issue of militants and instability in the region. During a meeting between Southern African leaders in May, Filipe Nyusi, Mozambique's president, said forming a unified force to tackle the issue of extremism in the region is the best way forward.
The terrorism you can't fight alone everywhere. This is the experience what we have. We needed to share the forces, not only in region, for Africa, for all way.
But Amnesty's Matsinye said it is important to address internal issues from security forces.
The way the country is continuing, it's not sustainable. We do not want to see Mozambique in ashes because of violence and violations of human rights.
And without holding attackers to account, it will be difficult for the government to win back the support of locals, he added. Salim Solomon, VOA News, Washington.
Doctors in South Africa, the continent's coronavirus epicenter, were expected to be busy as the virus ravaged its way across the nation. But one type of doctors are seeing an unexpected boom in demand: plastic surgeons. They say that the combination of lockdown, imposed isolation, and South Africa's world-class medical technology is causing a rush of people who are quietly changing their appearance. VOA's Anita Powell reports from Johannesburg.
South African doctor Saadia is very busy these days as the world battles the coronavirus. But she's not an infectious disease specialist. She's a plastic surgeon. And while many people try to avoid hospitals these days, Laher's is packed with those wanting nips, tucks, and new breasts.
There's definitely been a flood of people coming through. And again, that's mostly because a lot of people are still at home. They also, very aware. I think when something like a pandemic hits you, you kind of realize that we're all here on limited time and you want to make the most of everything. And if that means feeling better about yourself, then why not?
At her Johannesburg hospital, those wanting procedures first receive a COVID test and are kept in separate wards from ill patients. Alicia DeLong says she thought long and hard before deciding on a breast enlargement during the pandemic. Her procedure was done at a fertility clinic, as her doctor decided it was best to avoid busy hospitals.
Something that I've really wanted to do for a very long time. And when the time came, yeah, I just thought I'd go ahead and do it, regardless of the time we're living in. We don't know how long it's going to last. We don't know when it's going to end.
DeLong's procedure cost about $2,600. The American Society of Plastic Surgeons says the average cost of the same surgery in the U.S. is just under $4,000. While Africa gets attention for health problems, Dr. Lahare notes South Africa's medical offerings are world-class.
We still very much keep in touch with the latest and greatest of technologies and techniques. There's a lot of expertise out here. There's a lot to see and a lot to learn. And we've always been involved as a medical fraternity in all of that. So I think there's a lot that we can provide and contribute to.
And who knows what you'll leave with, she says. Maybe a new and improved you. Anita Powell, VOA News, Johannesburg.
Kenyan-based reporter Ruth Elmendorp spent almost 6 months in Tanzania because of travel restrictions imposed by the coronavirus. But he finally made it home after the skies between Tanzania and Kenya reopened. He is happy to be reunited with his girlfriend, but he found another Kenya than the country he left in March. He reports from Dar es Salaam and Nairobi.
I'm in the National Public Health Laboratory in Dar es Salaam for a COVID-19 test, and filming is not allowed. The lady at the counter just handed me the certificate with the result, and it is negative. I asked her what happens if one tests positive. You tested negative, so you don't have to know what happens if you test positive, she said. There are many people wanting to travel now that the skies have reopened. At the counter there's a photograph of President John Magufuli looming over the test applicants. In June he announced that Tanzania had become the first country in the world to vanquish the coronavirus. On the way back from the testing center I wondered how I could have avoided becoming infected in the nightclubs we went. Could Tanzania be really free of the virus? Feeling sad to leave, yet happy to go, we threw a goodbye party on the beach. The next day I checked in at the airport after having registered on a self-quarantine app established by Kenya's Ministry of Health. The flight was smooth and I quickly found a taxi driver to bring me home. But as soon as we cleared the gate of the airport, I realized there was no other traffic on the roads. The driver told me that it's because of the curfew and that we were exempted because of coming from the airport. Roaming through a dark and deserted Nairobi, I started wondering where I had ended up. The reunification with my girlfriend was wonderful and we were so happy, having missed each other for so long. The wake-up call came the next morning with an SMS alert from the Ministry of Health, saying that it was time to file my health details in the self-quarantine app. Kenya seemed to be serious, a realization that was driven home when I went out for shopping. My familiar shopping mall has been converted into one big hand-washing zone, with soap dispensers every 20 meters. The floor is speckled with footstep stickers, indicating social distancing space. The tables in my usual coffee shop are sprayed before patrons sit down. The menus have disappeared to prevent infection. Instead, there are stickers with QR codes for downloading the menu onto my phone. Then there is the curfew and the closure of bars and restaurants. Now I realize how isolated from COVID-19 I had been in Tanzania. We are happy to be together now in a country where at least the virus is acknowledged and we are reminded to stay vigilant. What really happened in Tanzania we will hopefully find out after the pandemic is over. But I miss my friends on the beach. The alerts for my health check will continue for 14 days. Ruth Elmendorp for VOA News in Nairobi.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, one teenager's invention that could help many of those in need of artificial limbs. Stay with us.
Hello, I'm Lynn Ormoudou, your VOA Health correspondent. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the World Health Organization says there are currently no drugs licensed for the treatment or prevention of COVID-19, and there is no proof that hydroxychloroquine or any other drug can cure or prevent coronavirus. The misuse of hydroxychloroquine can cause serious side effects, illness, and even lead to death. For more information on COVID-19, visit who.int or contact your local or national health authorities.
Welcome back to Africa 54. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's 4th annual Goalkeepers Report will be launched on Tuesday, September 15th. The Goalkeepers Report charts progress towards the UN's global goals for sustainable development. This year, new data shows that COVID-19 has stopped decades of progress across a broad range of health and development priorities in their tracks. In the publication, Bill and Melinda Gates offer proposals for how best to move forward. Africa 54's Lino Mudu spoke with Omar Sedi, Africa Director at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, about some of the findings of this year's Goalkeepers Report.
As you know, the philosophy or the spirit behind goalkeepers is to be in a position where we allow decision makers to get a sense of where we are in trying to get into our sustainable development goals, and then that would inform decision making. But we felt that this time, given the impact from the time the pandemic hit and where we are at this point in time, what the damage has been. And there have been a lot of other things that we've looked at. When you look at basic immunization coverage, which is really critical, it has gone from 84% to 70%. This is a setback that we've noticed just in 25 weeks. It's a setback that for something that was built in 25 years. But there's another theme also which is very important, especially going back to your first question about the key themes. One of those is just inequality. It has reinforced the fact that we actually live in an unequal society. And then when these pandemics also hit, they disproportionately tend to affect those who are the most vulnerable, including girls and children. The other theme that we also highlight is that despite the difficulties that many of these countries have faced under COVID, they've tried as best as they can to innovate.
What do you make of the COVID-19 response on the continent?
Overall, I have to say that I'm proud of African leaders because very early on, they've taken action. Ghana pulled testing to preserve real resources so that they can do it in a very smart way, given their means. Nigeria, the entire private sector, coming up with an initiative to put money aside so that they can help the officials fight with it. So a lot of different things have been done. South Africa, where you have chronically ill patients of HIV and TB, although the impact is still very high. 80+% of our populations here are in the informal sector. So, and this is what I always tell my colleagues, that what they've had to do is to deal with what we call the trade-off triangle. fighting the pandemic, fighting the economic pressures where it's about deciding between life and livelihood, and then keeping essential services, because that was also the problem, is that when I talk about the setbacks, right? So we talked about essential services. I talked about immunization. So a lot of the things that were done to get some gain in health, they've basically been basically wiped out.
The world is trying its best, but COVID-19 is still affecting people globally. So what is there that needs to be done to really have concrete results for Africa specifically?
So the first thing is that COVID response, as we see it, cannot be a one-country response. What is needed is a global concerted effort to look at the problem holistically, knowing that even those who are rushing to solve just their country's problem, there are limitations to that as well. So this is one of those situations where we all join by the hips. And long-term or medium-term, it will be very difficult to take care of this if you do not have a vaccine that stops it. And to get to that level, there has to be situations where distribution should be made, not according to who can afford it, according to who actually needs it, including health workers, et cetera, et cetera. You have to look at the world in one big space where you have that consultation. Those who can really afford it should be willing to actually contribute to it in a meaningful way. And the pharmaceuticals companies need to be willing to make it available at an affordable price. So consultation, those who can afford it to contribute more to it, and then those who are making it, make it affordable. Because yes, there is a human side to going that way, but there is also a fundamental side that basically looks at reality, because this is something that you cannot look at in isolation.
Sheikh Omar Sidi, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
That was Omar Sedi of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation speaking to Africa 54's Linomo Doom. A teenager has come up with a less expensive way of providing custom-built artificial limbs for those in need. VOA's June So reports from Ashburn, Virginia, on this young inventor and her 3D printer.
This is the first prototype that I made, and I hadn't quite gotten the hang of making this. I made it as if a girl would want it, with a little unicorn in the middle. So this is when it clenches, so the child can actually hold something with it, and it's not completely. My name is Mahsa Riar. I am 13 years old, and I founded my company Limitless Limb last year that makes 3D printed, customizable, and affordable prosthetics for children with limb loss. I read a book about a girl who lost her leg in an accident, and in the book she couldn't afford a prosthetic limb. And I was like, how expensive could prosthetic limbs be? So I did some research and found out that they're extremely expensive and most children can't even afford them. And that really made me sad, because I was thinking about all the kids who live in war zones, who lost their limb and can't, buy another limb because it's not available to them. And so I had a 3D printer and I had this idea, so I decided to make 3D printed prosthetics that are a lot cheaper and they can be customized since they're 3D printed. There's a video of me building my first hand. It's really long. It was really difficult to get all the pieces to fit and get them in the right spot, but I managed to figure it out, and after a lot of test tries, I got my first prototype. When I had the idea for my prosthetic limb, I consulted with an orthopedic surgeon, and these are the books that he gave me so I could figure out what I needed, what elements I needed to really make the prosthetic work. Then after that, I researched more online and really narrowed down my prosthetic design and printed it. I had to pitch my business, Limitless Limb, to the Young Entrepreneurs Academy investor panel. I ended up winning the grand prize. I got $1,500 toward my business, and I used that to buy a new 3D printer that can make my prosthetics more functional and print them at a faster rate. So my goal with Limitless Limb is to help equip every child with limb loss with a functional limb that they can use and so that they can feel whole again and not feel different from everybody else. When I'm not working on my business in 3D printing, I love to draw because it really relaxes me. And when I grow up, I want to go into art and design and be an architect. But I still want to help people, and it's always been my #1 priority to help people. So even if I am an architect, I'll still be helping people, and on the side with maybe 3D printing different things now, organs and hearts, I don't know.
Drive-in theaters were once a big part of American car culture in the mid-60s, but air-conditioned theaters eventually put most of them out of business. But these days, with movie theaters shut down because of the coronavirus, drive-in theaters are experiencing something of a renaissance. VOA's Tawhidu Islam visited a drive-in theater in rural Virginia and filed this report, narrated by Bezan Hamdad.
For months, Americans have been without the joy of seeing their favorite actors on the big screen because of the pandemic. But while there aren't many new movies coming out right now, there is still a place people can go to catch a movie safely. It's that relic of an older America, the drive-in theater. The Stevens City Drive-In Theater in Western Virginia is about an hour and a half away from Washington, D.C., but that's not stopping a lot of viewers.
I used to come here a lot when I was little, and I loved the experience. I haven't been in a few years since then, but I just wanted to come back and see what it's all about.
It's really nice because you're outdoors, you can see the picture much, much larger than you're in a regular theater.
All the way back.
There used to be thousands of drive-in theaters in the United States, but today there are merely a few hundred left. But some that remain have become local institutions.
Theater is a local icon, so to speak, for us, and we enjoy the movies they play and just the atmosphere that they present.
Theater management says drive-in theaters are naturally following social distancing, since everyone either stays in or camp outside their cars. One thing that has changed, patrons dial in their movie via FM radio, because the speakers at each parking spot could possibly transmit COVID.
Some of our classic speakers are covered up. Those usually you can connect them and put them in the car, but they're made of the same material as playground equipment, and according to all CDC, it's a potential virus transmission spot.
Yet, with cinemas slowly coming back online, it remains to be seen if this nostalgia for drive-ins will last.
Get up there.
For Tawhidul Islam in Stevens City, Virginia, Bejan Hamdad, VOA News.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thank you for watching.